helping with first and third grade for a few months, and then I landed in my favorite position, pre-K, and I've been there for about 7 years.
I chose to work in Columbus City Schools because it is the school district that is responsible for my education from K through 12 and is responsible for the education of my children K through 12. And so I have an affinity with the district, and I wanted to come back and contribute because of the experience that I had within the district. I work in a special needs program, so one of the most rewarding experiences is just coming in, working with our children who don't have language of any kind and teaching them American Sign Language so that they can communicate with us, and seeing them verbalize when they don't have anything to begin with.
When I get to have my pre-K promotions at the end of the year, you know, the kids are in their caps and gowns and they get to move on to kindergarten, and it's like celebrating everything they've done all year. It's like, it's a great moment every year. It's like, I can look forward to having that memorable moment. I'm the first impression that our parents and caregivers and students have for CCS. I'm that first stepping stone for school. So I feel like I have a lot of impact. Like if I can make their first year with us great, then that sets them up as they continue on. So I'm a big believer in the impact of.
Probably one of my most rewarding was when I received the Channel 10 Classroom Hero. I also was a nominated Teacher of the Year in the Linden area. And just watching children grow and go off to college and come back to me, so that's really exciting. I think the work that I do and the time that I put into each individual children prepares them for the future, prepares them for whether they're going to college or not going to college, just so that they become great citizens.
You know, I came here when I was 18 as an immigrant, and you know, the district, I went here to the district. So as a student, they helped me out, you know, ESL student who don't speak English. So I just felt like teachers were very helpful, and you know, now I just want to pay it forward. I just want to help other kids just like how my teachers helped me to be where I'm at today. You know, being the first person to graduate in my family was very hard for me to kind of grasp everything that went to it. But my teachers were there from day one to help every single minute. And one of my teachers even drove me from school to the administration office to make sure that all my papers are in and, you know, everything is set so that I can start school the next Monday. So I felt like that was so poignant, how the teachers cared about the students, their success and things like that. So I just felt like, you know, hey, this is what I want to be. This is what I want to do, you know, just help kids like myself who need help. Because if it wasn't them, I would not be sitting where I'm at right now.
The diversity. There are so many opportunities in Columbus that other small towns don't give you. We have a lot of resources here, but just the diversity of the families and the people that live here.
For the early childhood educator who's considering a career in Columbus City Schools, do it. We will come rally around you, and you start somewhere, but that is not where you end up. We will grow with you, and you will be surprised at the amount of professional growth and personal growth that you will have working with our children in this district.
City of Grace, Pastor Michael Young, Pastor Richard Jones, we're excited to support this event. We believe in investing our time, energy, and resources into things that are going to uplift our community and more specifically uplift our young people. So we subscribe to the vision of the HBCU College Fair. It is exposure for these young people to higher education opportunities.
First of all, my mother, she's an HBCU grad as well. She went to Alabama State University. She took me and my friends and my cousins along this HBCU tour. Without her, I wouldn't have had this experience. I seriously love my university. It's literally like such a family. As soon as I stepped on that campus, I was like, I need to go here. This is where I belong.
I am the first ambassador representative to have not only been a student getting recruited to these HBCUs, but to now be a current HBCU student recruiting the students. I could have gotten full rides to OSU and all that good stuff, but I knew that my heart and I knew down deep inside that I deserved and I wanted and desired to be at an HBCU.
I think it's pretty cool. They got a lot of nursing programs and like a lot of #1 programs at the HBCUs. I've been to Central State a couple times and then I got accepted into Hampton. So I was thinking about going there.
I love it at Hampton University. I love the family atmosphere. I've had professors call, text me, hey, where you at? Hey, this is what we did in class today when I said I wasn't gonna be in there. So they actually care about us and they love us.
It feels good to be the majority instead of the minority for once. Just Black excellence everywhere. People are achieving great things at Norfolk State, and not just Norfolk State, all my HBCU brothers and sisters across the nation. We're all doing amazing things. We're adding to the small percentage of Black doctors, nurses, physicians, lawyers, things like that. And it's just so remarkable to witness, and just knowing our history.
Understand more where they come from, and many times understanding your history helps you prepare more for your future. So to see young people who come from the same classrooms, the same neighborhoods, and the same communities as these young people do begins to create a different type of inspiration, and it makes things appear to be more attainable.
I shouldn't be alive. And I have the great testimony of being able to saying, if you stay focused and you stay driven, you will succeed and you will do great things here in life.
Dream big. And I know that sounds really cliche, but the sky's the limit. You could do everything you're destined to do.
Many times at predominantly white institutions, right, there's a certain part of our history that is not told or is left out. My father went to a HBCU. I'm a product. I was a football player. I got a scholarship to play at the University of Akron. But my father is a product of Central State University, HBCU. Much of my family from the South went to Bethune-Cookman, Florida A&M, predominantly Black universities. And, you know, I've kind of been able to glean from them along the way.
The real HU, okay? You're interested in medicine? Howard University produces Howard University, okay? You feel me? You're interested in medicine? Howard University produces the most Black doctors in America. Let's speak on it. You're interested in politics? We're right by the White House. Let's speak on it.
Hi, I'm Ansley Stevenson, Project Manager for Capital Improvements. We're out here today at Como Elementary School to highlight our Summer 2024 Playground Project. Here at Como Elementary, we've installed a brand new set that's rated for 2 to 5-year-olds. This will support our pre-K program that's existing at this building. Previously, we had no set that was rated for those kiddos. This is one of several sites we're doing upgrades at this summer. Some of these sites already had a set that was rated for 2 to 5-year-olds. We are just updating a set that was 20 or more years old. So when those kiddos come back, there's going to be a set that's especially designed for them. At our 2 to 5-year-old sets, we not only installed the large composite play set that has your classic bridges and slides that we know those 2 to 5-year-olds love, we also took the opportunity to add some sensory equipment. So not only did we add chimes, we have a xylophone and drums for those kiddos to enjoy a more sensory musical experience as well. We are looking at the set for 5 to 12-year-olds. We installed this set last summer when we started our playground replacement initiative. We're installing similar sets this summer at 6 sites. We'll continue this work for the foreseeable future with our permanent improvement funding in place. So if you haven't seen a set installed in your community, it's coming soon. When we installed this set, we really wanted to think about multiple types of play for that 5 to 12-year-old range. So you'll see those taller slides. We included multiple climbing elements to keep all of those kiddos engaged and active in their recess time. At these sites where we're doing playground upgrades, we also took the opportunity this summer to turn what was once a big expanse of black asphalt into another creative play environment. So we've incorporated not only the school logo with our dragon here in the background, but several additional play elements, including a 5-lane track, basketball courts, foursquare, and funnel ball.
It's a whole new team. The bond's getting better and better every day. Nehemiah got a high motor, confident. Jaden can shoot, he humble. Eli, he don't go hard. Deontay, good guard, poise. Coach Todd, he means a lot. More than the coach, off the court, on the court, wherever I'm at. Yeah, he always one call away every time. Always there for me. Make sure I'm good, make sure my family good.
He's been raised the right way by his father and his mother. Humble kid, hardworking kid. To be honest, I think he expected to start as a freshman. He came in ready. The first time I saw him, I could tell that he was advanced. And he worked his butt off. He was one of those guys that loves to be in the gym, doesn't matter, early in the morning.
In the City League high school basketball, last year I say Dalen, Noah, he go to Weststone. Roshan go to Beechcroft. Ro, he had like a good 20 to 30 points on us. Noah, he's an underrated player. Nobody really know about him, but he played hard, got a nice touch around the rim.
I think he represents the school really well. You know what I mean? There's been a lot of big-time student athletes that's come through the school, in basketball in particular, and I think he's right up there with anybody, with Seth Towns. The ambidextrous angle is unique, so much so it inspired a Kyrie Irving post on his Instagram. But yeah, I mean, you don't see it every day. You don't see it every day on that level where you can shoot threes with both hands, mid-ranges. You can come out of moves and get to either hand. And it's just a unique thing, man, and it's an inspiration to kids coming up under him.
8th grade, middle school, that's when I really started noticing I can shoot with both hands. At first, I didn't really know it was like something unique. I had a few NBA players talk to me in person and on social media. And it happens, it's like, wow. But I don't really let it get to my head that much because I still gotta get to that level. I got a chance to play in the Kingdom Summer League. That was amazing. Played against all types of pros, all different levels. The main goal, I wanna go to Dayton. I wanna win districts. I wanna go to college. Most of my family didn't go to college, so I wanna get that going in my family. If I didn't make it in basketball, I gotta have something other than basketball that I can go to or have. I wanna study like business or real estate.
He'll be a collegiate player. It's about where, you know what I mean? He's a high major talent. He has 2 high major offers right now. He'll be one of the kids that gets to pick what school he wants to go to.
College coaches should recruit me because I'm just a good leader, hustle hard, always gonna play hard, do my best.
He's a total student athlete. He gets better daily. He loves it. He watches film on his own. He sends me stuff and we dissect stuff. He's always in the gym. He's gonna help a program win on a high level. Averages almost 5 steals a game for us, and he wants to win. I believe he'll play on the highest level. He's on pace to be one of the best guards to come out of Columbus.
I definitely want to go to the NBA. After the NBA, I'd like to help kids around the world, especially in the city, just so they can get the opportunity to make it forward in basketball, get people out of tough times around their house.
So this is the first annual King in the Making to let our young men know that they are nurtured and loved and we have safe spaces for them.
Kids from all over our region say, come together, meet the other young kings in the district, learn from one another. We had the Say Your Name event for the girls and they wanted to find how can we find an event that honors young men in the district and region 2 as well. Recognizing that we are all young kings, what does that look like? Giving them something to look up to, but then also doing what boys do, finding ways to compete, participating in some virtual reality.
Some people might think to be a king means you have to dominate other people, to be at the highest level, you have power over everyone. But to me, I think a king means you help out, you try the best you can, show effort in everything you do, and lift people up to do better.
So to me, what being a king is just being your own person, being a leader.
I think anytime you have an opportunity for them to be celebrated, provide speakers, provide presentations from COSI to the City of Columbus, to the Mayor's Office, to the Deputy and the Sheriff's Department, and just a number of administrators and people from the community who actually came out to support this event.
ICE Mentors here, which is a partner of Columbus City Prep for Boys, who's coming and talking about character building, male etiquette, how we treat the ladies, right? Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am.
My mom, she pushed me. She support me. She just tell me what I need to do to go on in life. The best mom ever I could ever have.
Met with some of the younger kids, talked to them, really found that to be really interesting.
I've experienced many things, and one thing I've learned is how to socialize and communicate in difficult situations.
Being a leader, taking ownership of things that you have done.
I am a king, I am educated, right? Recognizing that these affirmations are imperative The world already sees us one way, and our goal is to control our own narrative, but there's nothing that can stop us from achieving our goals.
You're not a follower because a follower can lead you into trouble and end your whole career. And I don't want that to happen to me. I want to move on and get a scholarship.
You was picked for a reason, and to really appreciate that others who helped you be in the spot that you are in now.
I could be a role model by doing the right thing, showing
Good afternoon, everyone, or good early evening. Welcome to today's Thursday, June 12th, Academic and Facility Alignment Committee. I'm your Chair, Michael Cole, and excited to have our committee here. We've got a robust day planned with a lot of information. I hope that many of us had the opportunity to take a look at things and be able to distill it. But with that, can we call the roll?
Mr. Cole?
Yes, here.
Mr. Dare?
Present.
Ms. Turner?
Present.
Mr. Miller?
Present.
Mr. Robertson?
Present.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Can we rise for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We obviously had an opportunity to take a look at last month's or our last meeting's minutes. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is seconded. If all in favor, we'll move on to the next piece. All in favor?
Aye.
Wonderful. Okay. All right. We'll move right on into the first discussion, which is going to be our realignment update. I'd like to thank Catherine Mosier and Dr. Brown for being here with us today. So let's kick it right off.
Okay. As soon as they get the deck up here.
Are we getting that presentation up?
Let's say Mr. Stroud and team. There we go.
There we go. All right.
Maybe.
There you go. All right, team.
So good evening, Board President Cole, Vice President Adair, members of the committee, and public. Happy to be able to join you this evening to go back through sort of an overview and an extension of some of the conversations we've had around realignment. I start today with a brief sort of high-level facility footprint of the system as a whole, and some of the things that then led up to the realignment. And then the majority of the talk today, I'm going to focus on Broadway and Moeller because those are the schools that we're going to be focused on this year in terms of closing and realigning those students to other facilities. And then have a bit of call to action at the end in terms of things that we could use your help with as we move forward. Okay, thank you. So just briefly, we've got 112 facilities across this city, spread out all over. Those facilities have about 8.3 million square feet of space. We're built out for roughly 60,000 students, and yet our enrollment's slightly under 47,000 right now. And so there's a gap, and we have more available square footage than we have students. And a lot of that square footage is frankly quite old. Matter of fact, our oldest building was built in 1895. And just for context, and I'm sorry, Ms. Adair, you're going to hear this again, X-rays were discovered in 1895.
What building is that?
That's Hubbard. But I would like to say that's the only one that's in that range. It is not. We've got several that are right around turn of the century. We've had 46 buildings where we've made investments, and they're either modernized or new that have been built. But that leaves 66 buildings out there that have not. those 66 buildings are on average about 70 years old. 9 of them are over 80 years old. And so, as you might imagine, a building that was built when x-rays were discovered might not be aligned to 21st century instruction, might not be the type of place where we think we'd like to be educating our kids at this point in time. I think we got our money's worth out of those buildings as a community. That being said, again, those 66 other buildings that we have not invested in yet to make improvements, they're expensive to maintain. As you might imagine, a building built in 1895 is not easy to maintain. Buildings that are 80, 90 years old are expensive to maintain. So there's a lot of work here yet to be done to bring our buildings into alignment with our vision for instruction, which is, again, our students deserve modern facilities, much like we see in other places, that would support modern instruction, flexible design, and designs that support push-in, pull-out services, et cetera. Our board, knowing that, asked a task force to look at where we could begin to consolidate, and then the board itself took some time to do due diligence around this as well, and then named 5 buildings to be closed and consolidated to move around. Of those, the first 2 that we then came back to the board with a plan. So the board made that decision in December, said, hey, come back to us with a plan in June about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And so in early June, we came before the board to present them with a plan on how we'd move through this. It's phased. I'm talking about phase 1 today. Phase 1 has to do with Broadley and Moeller. Phase 2 and 3 have to do with what's going to go on with Buckeye and Cause. And then the final phase has to do with West Broad Elementary School and is contingent on funding. So Broadley and Moeller are both intended to close at the end of this academic year. And there's, in each case, we're looking to move students to neighboring schools. The neighboring schools to Broadley are Eastgate, East Columbus, and Fairmore. All those schools have been improved. They all went through an FMP process in the early 2000s. So we're taking students from a school that was built in the 50s, I believe, and moving them then to buildings that have been modernized or new as early as the early 2000s in this, 2008, 2007, 2006.
I went to East Columbus.
Pardon?
I went to East Columbus.
You went to East Columbus, okay. Yeah. So back in your neighborhood. So yeah, East Columbus just north of Broadley. Eastgate is just west of it, and Fairmore is just on the other side of Broad, just to the south of it. Moeller, on the other hand, again, planned to close at the end of this year. Similar layout there. Looking to have those students reassigned to Livingston and Lincoln Park. These, again, both modernized facilities, both are just due west of the Moeller community, and again, will involve the community in a boundary process to move through that. So while there was a task force that looked at the citywide resources and how we might want to align or realign instruction across the city, when it comes down to boundaries, we're talking about people's neighborhoods and where their children are going to go to school. It's one thing to look at the resources across the city as a whole. It's very different to talk about, hey, where is my child going to go next year based on where I live? So, when we talk about boundaries, I think it's incredibly important that we have parents and community members who are going to be impacted by the boundary involved in that boundary process because it's their community and they know it better than any of us. The process that we're going to work through needs to be completed by Wellness Week. So by the time we get around to Thanksgiving, we need to be able to tell parents, hey, if you live in the Broadley neighborhood, this is where your student will attend by address in the coming year. Need to have that done by Wellness Week so that we're set up for lottery process, transportation, and all that stuff down the road, and folks know some of that ahead of time and can begin to think about what does this mean for me. Maybe I'm happy with where I'll go by address. Maybe I want to pursue a lottery option for my student. By having that done by Wellness Week, by Thanksgiving, we preserve those options for parents and families to be able to exercise. The process that we're going to engage in, we're going to engage with an expert who does this work on a regular basis, Cropper GIS. This is their sort of bread and butter type of work. They do boundary work for school systems all around the country. It's a Columbus company. They, again, have done this work all over the country. They're doing this work with Dublin schools right now. They did it for Akron. Many of the neighboring communities here, they participated in this. This is their expertise, and we sort of phoned a friend to help us through this process and to facilitate this in a way that I think can, again, engage our community and have them involved as we move through it and provide the resources and support to be able to do that. I want to thank both our board members here for supporting that contract last time because, again, it brings a resource to the table that helps us do this in a way that again, engages and supports our families in that process as we move through it. We're going to have a representative planning team work on this process through it, some internal as well as external folks. We'll have online and in-person opportunities for the community writ large to participate in this. And I expect Cropper GIS to set up some web pages for us for each of these schools so that folks can go on, follow the content of this, but also have interactive maps to see, how are we thinking about where students would go in the following year. All of the above is meant to be accessible to folks in multiple ways over time to support people's participation and engagement with this. Yeah, and speaking of, this is a broad timeline for that. We actually started sending data to them yesterday to connect the dots and start building this process out for next year. The planning team will start meeting as early as July. We'll have public committee, advisory committee meetings in August, September, and October, and we'll have a couple public intervention, engagement and information sessions in the middle of that in both September and October. Again, by Thanksgiving, we need to have those letters to families so that they know where their students will attend by address. Once address is defined, once I know, I live in the Broadway community and I know where my student's going to attend by address, at that point our focus will be entirely on helping the school communities join. Now I imagine that a fairly large portion of the kids who live in Broadway are going to end up in Eastgate because Eastgate is actually the school that has the largest number of open seats. So just logically speaking, a sizable number of kids would be expected to be going to Eastgate. So pretend for a moment that the majority of kids are going to Eastgate. At that point, we want to make a connection between the students who are at Broadway currently with their counterparts at Eastgate so they can start building relationships with each other so the families can start to connect with the new school community and participate in that as we move throughout the year. So one of the things that we heard as we were doing this window of time planning, we had some focus groups with families, both in the Broadway community and the Moeller community. And what we heard from them loud and clear was, we need more communication. We need to hear more from you. So my first ask would be that as we're going through this process this year and you're hearing information from us, please help share it in your community. Please share it with the folks that you know. And if there are questions that are emerging in the community, please bring them back to us so that we can keep this flow of information back and forth to the community and keep people apprised. I think it's going to be hard for us to over-communicate in this process. So more communication is going to be better. To that end, we want to provide multiple opportunities for students and families to connect with their new schools. And we want, at the end of the school year, and we'll have some activities during the course of the year. At the end of the school year, we also want to honor and memorialize the buildings that are being closed. Generations of folks have gone through these buildings. They're anchors to a community. Let's honor that. Let's figure out what we need to do to memorialize that. We've actually have a standard operating procedure that was developed for that actually involves reaching out to the Historical Society as part of that work to honor, again, the legacy of these buildings as we move forward. All of the above is aimed at trying to build trust and a sense of belonging amongst the students and families as they connect to their new schools. We just want to help folks connect and help make this transition as seamless as possible. For students who receive special services, special education, ESL, there'll be an additional layer to that. Matter of fact, in terms of Broadway, we've already begun to move some special ed students from Broadway in the coming year. It was done intentionally, And the goal in that process of moving students who receive services, our goal in that is, one, to try to serve those students either in their home school or as close to their home school as possible. So when we had a self-contained unit that was at Broadway, we moved it to the building that was closest to that group of students. And we tried to move staff with it so there was continuity of staff and care. Continuity, again, coming back to focus group, continuity of care was really important to our families. So a lot of this individual movement piece involves individual phone calls to families and coordinating with them to help them understand the movement. And when we're talking about English language learners, those are phone calls that are being delivered by folks in our English language support department so that they can be done in the native language for folks as we move forward. Again, just trying to facilitate those connections wherever possible, trying to get kids served in their home school or in their high school neighborhood community. So what you'll see here is just a month-by-month rundown of the opportunities that we see during the coming year for us to be able to connect schools and connect students and families with their new school. Again, this will pick up immediately after the boundary is defined. We will begin to connect the dots between the buildings to support these connections. This plan was developed as part of the plan that was submitted to the board in June. And was developed with input from our teaching and learning staff, engagement, and communications teams, looking forward with this in terms of how we could better support this moving forward. And you'll see this continues all the way up to, back to school opening events, including an ice cream social, to culminate and help bring those communities together as we move forward. And finally, just a call to action on this again. It's going to be hard for us to over-communicate. We want folks to be involved in this process. We want folks to understand what's going on with us and to participate and engage. So as we anchor dates and as we begin to have communication materials coming out, again, any support you all can do to help provide or help connect that to your social networks would be deeply, deeply appreciated. This obviously, when we talk about realignment, that's just one part of what needs to happen in a facilities plan. If we really look at what the superintendent's vision is for the system, and obviously if we have 66 buildings that need to be renovated or replaced, realigning is only going to get you so far. We're going to need to do some other things. We're going to need new construction. We're going to need more renovations. We will need additional school closures to be able to make this happen as well. What we need is an integrated master plan that looks at how we invest our capital dollars over time and where we're going to need additional capital dollars if we want our students to have 21st century learning environments across this entire system. And that is going to take a little while to develop. But again, we need folk to lean into that process and inform it because the decisions that are associated with that are 50-year decisions. And if you build a new building, you're looking at a 50 to 100-year decision. And we want to make sure that, again, it represents the needs of the community and forward thinking around that as we move forward. And then, as we were looking at this process, and part of what we've talked about with some of the other folk here, is when we're coming together and talking about realigning buildings, we also need to be thinking about what we're going to do with that property. Nobody wants a vacant property in their neighborhood. Nobody. So we need to figure out what we're going to do with those properties as we move forward, and that's part of the work of the board is to make some determinations around that. And again, we need folk to lean into that space to help us and help the board determine what we're going to do with these vacant properties as we move forward. There's a lot of space here for the community to be involved, a lot of space for engagement in this work as we move forward, and frankly, we need that engagement to be able to do this successfully. So with that, be happy to take any questions that you might have.
All right, so I will open the floor to questions, but first what I'd love the opportunity to do, and first, thank you for this presentation. I know it's a repeat from the actual board this is the presentation you gave to the full board. I want to preface though that I wanted it to be repeated here so that this could be the first community bite at the apple. You all are residents in the city. As much as you are on this committee, you're residents in the city who are interested and involved in public education. So I wanted the first bite at the apple for feedback to be right here. But before we do that, can we just do a quick level set? Jennifer, what I'd love the opportunity to do is talk about what we've done in lead up in terms of facilities. Buildings that we are closed, buildings that are on the list for demolish. If we can just quickly level set on that so that you guys have an understanding of where we are in that space. And then we can ask the questions about how this aligns to this current realignment process.
I don't have all my notes up here, but so what the board has been working on, so I chair the ETRM committee, which is charged with the resources and which includes our real property. And so we have been working on getting buildings down that are really nuisances in the community. So the board has voted this year, I think it's 7 buildings are on the slate to go ahead and be demolished. So we will be working on then what to do with those properties. Most of them are on pieces of land that have existing schools. So for example, if you're familiar, or school purposes. So if you know where the South High School baseball, softball diamonds are, there was an old building there. That's gonna come down, but we're still using it as the baseball and softball, right? So we have to kind of prioritize the way that we work through it. But we do have buildings for example, like Monroe, that the board just voted on to demolish, with all the redevelopment happening in that community, being able to talk through what then that looks like. So we have those. That ETRM will be working on, in addition to properties that the board, in these plannings, will eventually come up to be vacant. So Broadley, Moeller, Buckeye, and the McGuffey building.
You said Monroe, right?
Monroe was a demo. We have a couple more properties that we still need to work through, for example, Maderi. It's a building that's historic, and so we have to figure out what we want to do with that property. So that one has not been touched yet, but it is vacant. So ETRM is working on the property side of things, and our 2 committees will kind of work hand in hand. This committee is really about, and Chair President can jump in here, is really about aligning what we need in buildings with the facilities, so making sure we're building the proper facility and bringing up new facilities. ETRM is really about maintaining the assets and figuring out what to do with the properties if we are going to sell them, as well as figure out how to pay for them. So we do all the money stuff too. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, I was looking for the update, yes.
Okay.
Just to kind of level set on that. But do we have any questions at this point in time, based on what you guys have heard? Let's talk away. And, if there's something that you have to add in terms of feedback, in terms of what it is you'd like to see with community engagement, where those opportunities are, here is the opportunity to also share that. Yes, sir.
What's the overall budget for the connected revitalization for, we're taking these buildings down, we're going to move these people? So how much money are we talking about that is going to be part of this process, and over what period of time?
Are you looking at me?
Go ahead. I was looking at the administration too. This is their process that they're looking at administration as well.
I think there's a 2-parter, and I can answer one part. I don't think I can answer the other. The one part is the savings factor in bringing them down. That's kind of what my committee would be more focused on. And we know that these 2 buildings that they're working on would be about $1.8 million in savings to the district. Now, in terms of what does it cost to do the realignment, we just hired the contractor, I think maybe if that's what Mr. Miller is asking, that would be, you all would have to help me answer that question.
Yeah, the contractor that we've got involved with this, I want to say the contract for the 2 is around $150,000 for the engagement for both of those, which again is about average for that work. Much of the other work that we're talking about in terms of engagement and movement of folks is part of the work of the district. And so we would be using our engagement team, our communications team. These are people that are currently employed. We have not priced out the hourly rate for what that would be to align that work for this. But this is critical work for us to support as we move forward.
Anyone else?
I do have a couple questions, and only because I've heard this like 3 times now, but now I have a little deeper questions. All right, so you've said that we are going to, when we do the boundary, aligning the boundaries, we're going to give the students, opportunities to do lottery early, and we're gonna, tell the families you're gonna go to this new school. Are we only doing that for the current students enrolled at Broadley, or are we doing that and Moeller, or are we doing that for any student who it would be their home school? Because we also have that problem where, maybe not a problem, we have that opportunity that we can do open enrollment. So there might be kids that live in the Broadley or Moeller boundaries that chose to go to another school, but technically they would also be redistricted because their home is in the boundary. So how are we thinking through that? And would those children also get any preferential treatment or special or early lottery, maybe we should call it?
So the students who have chosen to lottery out of the Broadley area already are in lottery placements and would be expected to continue with those. If they wanted to opt out of that, I think that's a very different animal, to be honest. Once students have lotteried into building, they have a right to return there, and we follow through with that.
Would they be told then that their home school is a different home school? So they might choose now, they might like Eastgate or
certainly the folks who live in that area will know what their school is by home address.
Okay.
So that is the case. The folks that we want to offer the preferential lottery to are students who live in that community who now are going to be moved to another school. And we want to afford them a different level of choice. Again, it just eases that transition to know that I have options.
My second question is, someone actually asked me this question, and I gave them an answer, but I want to double check my answer. So someone was looking at just the straight numbers of the seat counts, right, of the kids that are currently enrolled in Broadley, and doing math on their own and saying, well, if we take all those kids and we're putting them in these buildings, it doesn't still seem like enough seats. And I tried to explain, well, that's not really what we're doing, because there's programs too that are in these schools that are being moved, and so that it's not a 1-for-1.
Correct.
So could you maybe, if I got that right,
you did.
Let me know, and then maybe explain that better.
So when we talk about a boundary, it really is for the residents of that area, that by residents, this is where I would go to school. And so by residents, we will move students over. Students who participate in programming, again, we're taking this as an opportunity to try to provide that programming closer to where they live. This is something that we want to lean into as a system writ large, because when we think about this, really the driver here is to improve student experience. We want students to have a better instructional experience because they're in a better instructional environment. And if we have more students in a common instructional environment, then we also can offer more robust opportunities. This is something that Ms. Mosier could speak to probably more eloquently than me. But it will, so we're also then looking at, in terms of improved experience for students, well, if we're transporting students who receive services for English instruction for their acquisition of English, we're transporting them across town to a school, or if we're taking special ed students and we're transporting them long distances, I don't want to ride around on the bus forever. I don't want that to be part of my day every day. So if we have an opportunity to shorten bus rides for kids, serve them in their own community, or better yet, in their home school, it begins to strengthen the homeschool community, and it allows people to again, receive services in their home school instead of, frankly, when you look at our ELL students or special ed students, it could be 2 or 3 different schools that they get spread out to over time. I just think this is an opportunity for us to try to be kinder to our families as we move forward. But yes, to your point then, in the case of Broadley, if substantial chunk of the Broadway enrollment has been filled with English language learners, it's unlikely that all those students are going to follow over to the new school. So,
Because the goal would be to get them to their home schools.
absolutely, or at least closer.
All right. Are there any additional questions?
I got one more. In this process, what about teacher assignments or teacher reassignments? How is that going to affect, because we know that certain kids get attached to certain teachers and teachers have their own proclivities about where they teach in that community. How are you managing that process?
Well, first and foremost, as kids go from one grade to another, they change teachers naturally. So as we transition between years, it's likely some of that will happen. I know that in the case of when we're trying to move special ed units or move ELL units, we are making an effort where possible to have teachers follow the students to the new locations. But a lot of that, frankly, is dictated by our collective bargaining agreement. Now, as part of that plan that we presented to the board, there is a standard operating procedure to go through this that talks about how we're going to work with the union to try to facilitate these movements and to support our staff, because I've spent a lot of time today talking about how important it is to take care of our families and our students. It's important that we take care of our staff too, and to really lean into that space and think about that. But, part of that is dictated by our collective bargaining agreement. Again, this is part of why we want to get the boundaries defined so early, because then it helps folk know where kids are going to be, and then it gives them more information as staff are beginning to think about where they want to be. It gives them more information to enter that process.
All right.
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
I want to thank you for this presentation. I've seen it online. I saw the superintendent also offer the same information. The consolidation and elimination of old buildings is something that's essential for the district. The district can't afford to carry old buildings, and I understand that that's emotional for people. But progress means that we must move on. But having said that, you mentioned a couple key words. You said better instructional environments. This is not on this paper, but I'd like to stretch Columbus City Schools' imagination that an environment doesn't have to be a building. I hope the largest school district in the state has not given up on online learning. I understand during the pandemic it was not ideal, but we already know through no different studies that online instruction is just as effective as in person, particularly if that is a choice on options that families are seeking. Right now, we don't really have that option. And I'm challenging you to go again, look back at the online learning. It must be bigger than one little school that you shove everybody in for online learning. That should be available in any high school. When you do that, you bring down the pressure on the building, but you're offering a robust education the way the families want it online. Thank you.
All right. You all have that feedback. You want to speak to that, Ms. Mosier?
Thank you. I do just want to remind our families in the community that we do offer Columbus Online Academy, serving students in grades 7 through 12. So we do offer an opportunity. You're absolutely right that it is not an opportunity provided in every high school. However, for families who do want to engage in a fully remote experience, we do have the Columbus Online Academy.
Well, thank you for that. And then there is another option that we provide for online learning, isn't there? Isn't there another opportunity for folks, particularly in the credit recovery space? Can you talk about that?
Sure. So what we do offer in each high school is an opportunity for students to take advantage of what we refer to as our Apex program. That does provide credit recovery and in some cases opportunities for acceleration. We actually have high school students who are involved in that program even during the summer.
I am familiar with that program, but we're talking about students at the bottom of the achievement. I'm saying that the best students ought to be able to take an online course if they choose to, and we should be offering that course in a very vibrant way, that they actually learn something and excel. That where other schools where they apply recognize the benefit of online education to prepare students in Columbus City schools. Every student that goes to college from Columbus City schools will be required to learn online. Every last one of them. They should not be introduced to that when they get to college, because then the college thinks that we're not preparing students to learn in all types of learning environments, and particularly online. I am suggesting that this board and the leadership go back and revisit online education, the best that we have to offer in the state compared to what we're doing. And I think you'll see a big gap.
A big gap or big gap closure?
I'm just talking about how it's offered. You ought to have the best online instructors. You ought to have parents banging on the door. We want our children in that school right there. Other districts are doing it.
Any point of clarification you want to offer?
I think what I'm hearing is maybe an opportunity for further discussion at this committee. We could certainly bring forward some information about what we currently offer. But absolutely, the point of coming to this committee is to talk about what's currently happening, but also to be responsive to community feedback. So I thank you.
I agree. And I'm not thinking about right now. We're about 5 years from now. The children that are in 5th grade, by the time they make it to high school in Columbus City schools, this should be vibrant throughout the schools. You're bringing down the pressure on your buildings, you're keeping your enrollments up, and you're offering it online. Very doable, very possible, very doable.
And let me ask you a question, just as a point of clarification. When you say online learning, describe what that entails.
Oh, online learning involves the internet. But in my way of doing online learning, it also involves an instructor. In the academic recovery, there is no instructor. It is self-paced.
Okay, so I got you on the internet. I think all of us are there with that. Where I'm trying to get to is when you say instruction, have an instructor. Are we talking about virtual instruction where that teacher is being recorded online, having the opportunity to instruct a class, however big or small that cohort is, that class is? Are you speaking from it from that standpoint?
Well, I'm speaking it from, I don't know about the instructor being there, because I believe your instructors actually have to drive to a building to implement online learning. Unnecessary. You're defeating the purpose of online learning. What I'm saying is that there's a learning management system that you all have paid a lot of money for. And if you maximize that learning management system, you're going to have to train parents and students how to use it and how to maximize it. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay. I thank you for that. All right. I just wanted to be clear. People, even for me, someone who's been in a classroom and instructed, right? Online could also mean that I'm providing curriculum online that you're leveraging to complete your assignments.
Of course.
That kind of thing. That's what part of what I'm hearing, but I wanted to get the broader depth of what it is you speak.
Yeah. Well, you have a learning management system. What is it?
Canvas.
Canvas. What a beautiful system. You have a system already. You need to maximize it. People need to be trained on how to use it, on how to teach online. Don't be afraid. I know that the pandemic did not go well, but neither did it go well for a lot of districts. But we cannot give up on creating vibrant online learning experiences. You will attract families. You will keep families. Families need those options, because one of the key things here with better instructional environments is providing families all options to educate their children that they choose to use, and particularly online.
Okay, thank you. Now, with that, was there something else you wanted to add? Now, with that, because this is where I wanted to be able to take that transition to the next presentation, But I think it's important to have the conversation in this space, because what you really bring up is quality of education, improving the quality. So when we think about this realignment process, we think about our goals and our guardrails as a district. How do you see this aligning? Where are those dots connecting in a way that we can give some sort of predictable idea, more than just saying it, that we can actually give a predictable idea that we're going to meet, that students are going to meet these outcomes? If you can talk a bit about that. How is this going to enrich, enhance, advance outcomes for students in a way that we set the goals towards? How does this alignment process, this realignment process, tie into that at all?
So this was an abbreviated presentation tonight. In the larger presentation, we spent quite a bit of time talking about the academic vision for the system and the gaps between where we are and where we want to be. So when I think about, this realignment and what this does, again, it's moving students, one, from older facilities that were designed for a different instructional model to modern facilities that support modern instruction. They also tend to be larger facilities that hold a little bit larger student enrollment, maybe not as large as we would like in some cases. If you're looking at what would be required if we're looking at new construction would require elementary schools of about 600 students. In another system that I was in, our standard elementary school, we were growing by about 1,000 kids a year. Our standard elementary size was 700 students. Every one of them. We had very little variation around that. And having a larger elementary school afforded us more opportunities for kids. And a modern design really then, again, supports instruction. I'm used to buildings where I could walk in and there was a pull-out room adjacent to the main room with visibility into the classroom. You've seen, yeah. It's just a different way of being, and flexible. And where you also see this when you walk through a modern facility, the common spaces tend to be larger. They tend to be able to be flexibly arranged so that if you want to have instruction outside the classroom or bring classes together to do something, you've got these flexible spaces that can be used in a variety of ways over time. I think for our facilities folks, they get really excited about the idea of flexibility because, again, how instruction evolves over time. We want to have environments that can flexibly adapt to that as we move forward. So yes, moving students into more modernized environments, having larger student bodies affords a better student experience, more likely that they're going to have a full-time art teacher, full-time music teacher, instead of sharing it with other buildings. That creates a stronger learning community in the school. If I have multiple teachers at a grade level, then there's a better opportunity for teachers to interact and learn from one another. It provides a more robust opportunity for the staff as well as we move forward. So, yeah, we're looking at these, and we talked about elementary, but when we get into the middle high school, again, we're talking about larger facilities over time. Newer facilities for a middle school, around 800 kids is the floor for funding. And high school is around 1,200. Well, when we start talking about larger high schools, then we're talking about, again, more diverse course offerings, more likely that you're going to have AP offerings, a broader array of CTE courses. And then, again, we talk about student experience. A lot of our students, a lot of us, there were activities that we did in school in terms of extracurricular things that helped keep us engaged. It was part of why we, so. You get a larger high school, the likelihood of being in Division I competition goes up, the likelihood that you've got a varsity and a JV team, there's more room for folks to be able to participate in these things as you have a larger group of students coming together. So again, I think the overall alignment efforts here are aligned to move us towards this vision. But I'm not going to pretend for a moment that just consolidating buildings is sufficient. It's a necessary step, but it is far from sufficient. We're going to need new construction. We're going to need additional renovations to get into that space over time. And that, again, means having this, from my seat, an annual conversation, at least annual conversation about how we're spending our capital funds in what we need in terms of funding to be able to get from where we are to where we need to be.
Okay. What I want to be able to encourage this committee to do specifically is think about what are the things that we need to suggest around monitoring. What are the things that we can actually take a look at to be sure that when we do these consolidations, when we do these closures, should future boards begin the construction process, how does this align to student outcomes? What is it that we need to observe in the process of aligning facilities with curriculum, or actually either or, but making curriculum the first priority, academics the first priority? How then do we design facilities in spaces that actually meet the needs of students academically? I want us to just continue to that, because what we're going to continue to do moving forward is walk alongside this process in a way that we're informed, in a way that we're engaged, and also in a way that we're providing good feedback to the board to say, these are the things that, you guys should be considering in terms of monitoring to ensure that we're strengthening reading proficiency, that we're strengthening math proficiency, that we are closing opportunity gaps with students, whether it's online enrichment, academically, or something else alongside that. But here's the opportunity and the space. I want to make sure I'm encouraging us to do that. That's why I wanted this presentation done here with this committee. Does anybody have any thoughts or any questions before we transition? Yes.
I do. I just want to thank the administration for this presentation. I was a committee member and a community member when we first had this conversation regarding school closures, and I want to honestly say that the communication initially was not as transparent as I feel like it's going to be moving forward, and I want to thank you guys for that. Also, shouting out the monthly engagement. I think it needs to be a continuous conversation that we're having with families regarding the consolidations of schools. As we know, a lot of community members had different emotions and feelings regarding the school closures. And as you guys mentioned, schools do have to close. And I believe you guys also mentioned that additional schools will have to close. So I hope that we keep this same kind of open communication with the community as we move forward in the current closures, and also discussing those additional buildings that will have to close. Something I want to mention before we transition into metrics, in regards to the consolidation of buildings. I come from a background of special education advocacy. I had an IEP. So I know the classrooms you were discussing with the middle room, that was transparent. My biggest fear, and I'm glad we brought up the quality of education, overcrowding. Smaller classrooms have been scientifically proven for years to be more effective for those diverse learners, those ELL learners. So my biggest question I want to pose to you guys before we transition is, what is the timeline going to look like for this consolidation? Will these students be in these schools for the next 2-3 years? What is the construction timeline going to look like? How are we going to support those teachers who are now going to get that surplus of students? So what does the delivery look like in these classrooms? So something I would really be interested into kind of getting information as we move forward is the number of students going into each school, and the number of students that will be in each classroom, the number of teachers, and the number of instructional assistants. Because we want to make sure that we're also operating in a way that is effective, but also within, our own Columbus City guidelines and guardrails. Because that's how we really ensure that quality education is really being provided. So those are metrics I would love to keep an eye out when we get that information from parents and community members, where they're deciding. I think also that should be kind of broadcast. I think other families need to know, okay, they didn't jump from so-and-so, because families don't want to send their children to an overcrowded school. Bullying, overcrowded schools lead to also other issues. Thank you for highlighting all the glitz and glam that it could, promote, but also there's the other side as well. We also want to make sure that we are safeguarding that as well. But yeah, that was my piece of information. I would love to know the metrics in regards of teachers, instructional assistants, my ELL students, those instructors, and I almost in a map in regards to those neighborhoods that are experiencing those school closures, so we can actually fill those gaps. In the time being, until we have those new buildings or innovations of what we're going to do with those properties, and et cetera.
I thank you for that, because that gives, I hope that as you guys are listening to this, there's actual visual that you guys can see where, you know, a particular school with its feeder pattern is mapped out, particularly how this looks across the board from, again, in-school, in-class curriculum to all the things that you aligned as inputs to get kids there, from transportation, staff resources, the whole nine. So as you guys think about that, as we move forward, especially in the engagement process, perhaps this is an opportunity to give the community an exercise and an experience, the way we actually have done in the past. So thank you for that. In closing, as we transition to the interim guardrails conversation, I just wanted to share just a little bit of information about our graduating cohort for 2025. First and foremost, a cohort is not just a class, right? It is a group of students, as you well know, sir, that started in 9th grade together and finished in 12th grade together. Well, this class, from a number standpoint, a population standpoint that we know to date, but it's and counting, because we still have a summer cohort to graduate. At this point, I know we've graduated 2,460 students. So a little bit under 2,500 students we've been able to graduate, and that number is still increasing. What we've been able to see in terms of their college readiness is about 45% of them are ready to walk into 2- and 4-year higher education institutions. 45% of that graduating population is college bound. Another 28% are ready to actually go to work with over 15,000 credentials, micro-credentials or certifications. So we have, I want to say, what was it, like 800-something students or 700-something, 600-something students, 676, something around those lines, of students who graduated with career tech ed education and certifications. These are youngsters, again, that are actually ready to go into workforce, prepared, or go into secondary education or higher ed education, ready to, engage higher certifications. We have about 41 students who completed their commitments to enlist in the military, over 80 students who are actually still working on finalizing their commitment to enlistment. In terms of weighted GPA, in terms of weighted grade point average, the average GPA of this graduating cohort is a 2.7. It is a 2.7 GPA. That is a B average GPA. That means there's some continual improvement opportunity there. I'm not beating on my chest about it, but I do say that to defy any myth that our students are not doing, that are doing actually worse than what it is that we hear far too often. Our students, on an average, are averaging a 2.7 GPA. That is a B minus GPA, B GPA, all right? These students, in closing, in the higher ed space have been awarded, I want to say, over $57 million in scholarships and awards. These are students that, again, have demonstrated every bit of accolade and readiness to move on in life. So I think any of us who particularly have raised the children into adulthood well know that, that this run-along process doesn't end just because they turned 18 or 17 and graduated high school. It does not stop there. There are other adulting lessons that it's incumbent of us as adults who are closest to kids to teach them. But when it comes to the rudiments, these opportunities are provided, and how well we've taken advantage of them, and we've seen those who've done it, because now we've got a 2.7 average GPA. We've seen it because we've got kids earning scholarships and awards. We've seen it because we've got a Columbus Promise. I could go on, but I just wanted to share some information about this graduating cohort that I think is very important for people to know. With that, we will move on to the overview of board guardrails. Now, moving into this conversation, it's very important. First and foremost, our governance model, our board governance model is called Student Outcomes Focused Governance. Now, I could say SOFG all day, but I don't want to make that connection to just what it's called. I want to make the connection to its motto and its charge. It's that student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change. It isn't something nice and fancy and slick and convenient to say. It is an honest model that we all believe in, have invested in, and work towards every day, not just as the board, but also as the administration. Sindel is on the call with us too. I don't think that we can hear him, but he is viewing it. So today's conversation is around guardrails. Guardrails and just are really the prohibitives, but the things that we assign that the superintendent or administration will not move outside the guidelines of. Guardrails are those things that help us stay in the lane that we're trying to stay in, help us stay on track, and remain better focused on what our goals are. They assist goals by helping us understand what it is that we're going to help be more predictive, but more importantly, be more in line with to ensure that we reach the goals that we set. In this instance, there are 4, but I'll let you guys go into that. But if there are any questions about guardrails, please feel free to open up and we can elaborate further. Mrs. Mosier.
Thank you so much. So, President Cole, thank you for setting the stage here. This presentation is going to focus on guardrails, but before we get to guardrails, I just want to remind all of us that several years ago, the board went out and did a comprehensive listening tour, met with community members, stakeholders, and what came out of that work was a clear vision for what our community expects of students as they graduate. And so we refer to this as our North Star, or our portrait of a graduate, and you can see the attributes there. And I think back to the previous presentation that as you were listening for how we are being adaptive. You were thinking critically, thinking with empathy, giving us feedback about how we are communicating. And certainly we heard a push for us to think about technology. So in addition to earning credits and meeting competencies, the expectation is also that our students have these attributes as they graduate from Columbus City Schools. Again, this is the vision. And connected to that vision is very clear guidance that the board has provided to the superintendent about our goals in reading, in math, and in closing opportunity gaps related to matriculation and graduation. If you watch board meetings or you've attended board meetings, you know that about once a month, one of the board meetings is focused on monitoring the goals. And so we report out on each goal once a year. We also report out on interim measures that are predictive that help the board to understand the current performance of students in the district and whether we are on track. If we're off track, then it's an expectation that we have a comprehensive plan to get back on track. In a similar way, the portrait and the goals represent the vision of the community. Guardrails represent the values. So you heard President Cole explain they're written in a way that is prohibitive. It's intended to be, sometimes people say, why is it written in the negative like that? Well, that's on purpose. If you think about those guards that, I don't know about you, but I put up when I try to bowl, it's a guardrail that says keep within this lane. And there are 4 board guardrails. I won't read each one, but just to enforce the point about the way they are written. So the first one related to supporting intervention systems, the superintendent will not allow the multi-tiered systems of support for students to be under-resourced. Again, a value that the community named as part of that listening process. After the pandemic, we reset our metrics for goals, but we did not reset metrics around guardrails. So it's time to do that, and that is the process that I'm going to talk a little bit more about in the next few minutes. Monitoring guardrails does require that we set metrics so that the board is able to easily understand, are we on track or off track related to each of the guardrails?
Can I just interlude, intervene just a second? Much like goals, guardrails are smart. They are specific, they are measurable, they are achievable, they're relevant, they're time-bound. So it's important to understand that the same framework by which we design our goals, for the most part, works the same way. Those requirements are the same for guardrails. So it's important that we share that. So go ahead.
Thank you. So during June, we will be gathering feedback. And I do want to name that at the conclusion of this meeting, you will receive a link to help provide some feedback to the administration as we are updating our metrics aligned to each of the guardrails. And I'll give you a preview in just a minute of some of the questions that we're going to ask you to respond to. We will then be selecting the language that best aligns, or best represents that value. So when we come back to this committee in August, when you reconvene, we will have draft metrics for each of the guardrails to share with you, and receive some additional feedback from this committee about those guardrails, the interims. And then in September, the superintendent will present 2 to 3 metrics related to each of those guardrails that you saw on the previous slide. Again, those metrics are going to help the board to monitor whether we're on track or off track related to each of the guardrails. So we're not going to go through this whole exercise, but just want to share with you what we'll be really looking for is, so within this first guardrail, the one that I read about multi-tiered systems of support, we'll ask for feedback. What value is this guardrail looking to uphold? And what are a couple of words that you might describe this guardrail? And then we'll ask 3 questions about what would not be happening. So is there something that is currently happening that you believe would not occur if we are aligned to this within this guardrail? And then we'll be asking for some feedback around how would we know that it's happening or not happening. Oh, I jumped ahead. A couple of things that you can expect when we come back to this committee in August would be aligned with President Cole, what you shared related to the way that the interim metrics will be written. They will certainly be valid and they will be measurable. They will help to make the guardrail visible. What does it mean to be properly resourced within a multi-tiered system of support? You can expect that they will be monitorable within the school year and predictive. You can expect that if all of the goals are achieved, all of the interim metrics, that it is reasonable to expect that we are aligned and we're working within that guardrail. A couple of things that will not be. The guardrail metric will not describe everything that is happening related to that guardrail. So the metrics will not describe everything related to multi-tiered systems of support, for example, but they'll be very specific to what you can expect to be happening within a school year. And again, they will be reasonable interpretations of that guardrail. This is very important because as we are looking for feedback, just want to be clear that everything that you may provide as feedback won't necessarily show up in the interim metrics, but we will certainly be looking for the themes and to be in line with the values that the community shared with the board as most important. So again, we will come back with 2 or 3 metrics for each of the guardrails. We will come to this committee in August, and then we will come back to this committee in September before the superintendent presents the final version of the interim metrics to the board for adoption. And what you can expect after that is that the board will follow the adopted calendar for monitoring. And just a reminder about that monitoring calendar. So September, the updated metrics are scheduled to be adopted. You can then expect that the superintendent will first report progress in December on equitable resources. That's one of the guardrails. In April, the superintendent will report on the progress for interim metrics related to whole child. In May, culturally responsive staff, and in June, that's supporting intervention systems. And with that, I'll be happy to answer. Dr. Brown is here as well. We have been working closely together to look at, again, updating the metrics related to each of those guardrails. So I'll actually put the guardrails back up there as I open the floor for questions.
All right. Before we get started with questions, I want to just walk through these guardrails, very quickly read them. They're up there, aren't they?
They are.
Okay, great. Then no worries. You all can see them?
Yes, and we have the handout.
Presentation has a handout. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Are there any questions? Let's open the floor. Some of you had the opportunity to actually join us for a joint committee session at the top of April to experience, what goals and guardrails are, how they're established, how we work with them. But are there any questions at this point right now, even about certain specifics, how it is we look at certain things, What does a whole child focus mean? I mean, are there any questions at this point about the guardrails? And is there any feedback that you'd like to offer in terms of what it is you think we should be monitoring in the process of monitoring guardrails? What are those qualities? What are those things we should be looking for, looking at? And I think what I need to do is pull up, I don't think I have it on here. There's that packet that the board gets that shows what color you're in, if you're in, red, if you're in yellow, if you're in green, or you're in blue. Blue is the highest color in terms of qualifications as to how good we're performing if we're monitoring guardrails correctly. I'm mad at myself. I don't have that with me. But I'll make sure that we share that packet with you all as well, so you can get a deeper understanding of what those things are that we're actually looking at to say that we're performing, that the administration largely is performing in accordance to a particular ideally a higher level of performance with guardrail monitoring, how well we're doing that.
So what,
Go ahead,
the expected outcome for tonight was really to provide an update for this committee to let you know that we are resetting metrics, and that you should expect that in August and September, we'll be coming back to this committee with the specific proposed metrics. Again, they're different than goals. Goals are really focused on the student outcomes. Guardrails certainly lead to student outcomes, but they may also include language around inputs.
Inputs and outputs on the adult side. I think that guardrails are unique in that they actually help drive the behavior change. Because now you know now what box you're operating in, or how far within reaching the goals you can go. It helps us be clearer about our direction and giving the administration additional guidance where necessary. But I do like the guardrail concept because it's very counterintuitive. Just in the fact that it is fashioned as a thou shalt not, thou will not, even though there's some pushback against that too. But I like the fact that it actually helps us peel the layers a little more about how we'll successfully get there and the ways in which we should be watching it and providing our feedback in the process. So thank you for this presentation. Are there any closing ideas? Yes, sir.
I would like to just make a couple comments about the goals.
Go ahead.
I want to thank Mrs. Mosier for this presentation as well as our conversation in between meetings. Thank you for making the time. She has educated me, encouraged me. But I want to talk about strengthening reading proficiency. I've been working in 4 elementary schools in Linden for the last 2 years. Huey, North Linden, East Linden, Linden STEM. I'm challenging this board to do some early intervention. Not only are the reading scores so low, but it is impoverished communities. 71% of the households are single parents. 252 are single fathers. So you have adults individually trying to do this on their own. And I think that we have to go take a look. We have 2 years to reach this goal of 44.5%. I don't know where that came from, but I can't have my child as part of the 56% that cannot read. I am advocating for these children. They are in impoverished households. I do not judge how they're in that position, but I'm advocating for the least of these, that more resources need to be invested in their early reading. We know that when children can read, they have a chance in this life to succeed. If they cannot read, By the fourth grade, there's not a dime, nor a dollar, nor a program set aside to teach anybody to read after the fourth grade. Those families are on their own. We must have early intervention. If not, criminality and illiteracy are Siamese twins. 60% of all men going into prison, according to the Department of Prisons, is illiterate. That's why they drop out. There's no need to stay. So I am challenging this board to take a second look. Early intervention, K. No, you have some preschools. Preschool all the way up to second grade. You don't learn to read in the third grade. And I challenge families and the families I work with. Literacy begins at home. Columbus City Schools is doing the science of reading.
Yes,
I'm in the community talking about the love of reading. I have second graders look me in the face and tell me they hate reading. I say, Daddy, you got a lot of work. It's parents' job to feed children and create an environment where they love to read. We already know they're proficient on a cell phone. If you're proficient on a cell phone, which a 4-year-old spends 4.5 hours a day on one, then we can carve out 20 minutes a day to read with your children. 20 minutes a day. Well, give a child 1.8 million words before their eyes for a year. 20 minutes a day, parents, you have to read with your children. It's your responsibility. Thank you.
Nope, thank you. Can you talk a little bit about science of reading and some of the things that we've experienced in terms of success with pre-K? This is not a counter to what Dr. Robinson is talking about at all. It actually supplements what he says. But I think there's an opportunity for the public to learn a little bit more about our successes in the early childhood development space, particularly around literacy.
Sure. So, we could talk a long time about the science of reading, so I'll keep this short and high level. But over the last couple of decades, the research has become very clear that there is a science associated with how students learn to read. And so we actually began to train Columbus City school teachers well before it became a state mandate, aligned to the science of reading. We invested a significant amount of dollars from our ESSER funds on professional development to make sure that all of our elementary teachers had the opportunity to engage in letters training. That's really the blue ribbon version of professional development related to science of reading. But I will also name that our secondary teachers this year also have been participating in training related to the science of reading. So to your very point, it is not sufficient that the literacy and the instruction aligned to the science of reading, that it would stop at elementary. And so our secondary teachers are completing the modules related to science of reading as well. President Cole talked about that one recently. So to your question about early intervention, one, our curriculum is aligned to the science of reading. Our daily instruction in all of our elementary schools is aligned using resources aligned to the science of reading. For our youngest learners, we do offer pre-K programming. It is very much an academic program. In this committee received a presentation about pre-K a couple of months ago. What we see is that for our students who participate in one of our pre-K programs, and remember that they are all at that highest state rating, all Columbus City School pre-K programs are at that highest rating. For students who participate in one of our pre-K programs, they enter kindergarten ready. and we see a higher level of readiness for when our students take those very first assessments and when they enter kindergarten, and that continues. We're beginning to look at some of the longitudinal data related to how those students are doing, certainly by the time they take that third grade reading achievement test.
I thank you.
It's good news. It's good news.
I thank you for that. And the data is showing that there is, so we saw a very significant dip during COVID. During COVID, we saw a significant dip. But since we've actually gone back to the classroom, we have saw a growing incremental dip. We're not, growth. We're not seeing a real dip. We're seeing more of a growth, a steady kind of forward growth. There's still opportunity to continuously improve in this space academically for students and for staff, but we're doing a steady-handed job of increasing our growth and our capacity in that space.
Now, I said a couple of times for our students who participate, we will not be satisfied until all students in the city have the opportunity, that we have seats available. We refer to that as universal pre-K, that all students should have the opportunity to participate in that high-quality early childhood education.
And let me qualify that too before I move on, that the growth is from pre-K to 3. So we're actually seeing our third grade scores increasing and going up. So I want to make that clear, that we were talking about, a portion of it, this conversation was around the pre-K space. But overall, we're seeing a trend of growth. We are seeing a trend of growth in third grade reading towards our goals. So before I close out with just a quick other information, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Something I mentioned during the presentation we had by administration, they were going over pre-K and introduced the idea of universal pre-K. To kind of tag off Mr. Robinson, something I had just thrown out there to the board is pre-K early screening. As we continue to grow, I think that's something that would be essential to growth, to catch those young learners at a very, very young age, before they get to hit third grade and hit testing, so we can supply those accommodations where they're needed. That's something that I feel like the board should continue to discuss upon as we discuss the, moving forward with the ideas of universal pre-K and facilities as such. So I just want to reiterate that because as a dyslexic learner, I believe it's important to testing and screening as early as possible to really ensure that we set these students up for success. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go, I just wanted to ask one more time, are we clear on the timeline with this guardrail piece in terms of coming back to this committee, in terms of moving forward with where we're going in terms of community engagement, this whole process? Are we clear on the timeline? Is everybody clear with the initiative and what it is we're trying to do? And even in the monitoring calendar as well, are we clear on all of that?
We will come back in August to this committee with draft metrics, and then we will come back again in September before the superintendent brings the interim metrics for each of the guardrails to the board.
All right. Before we close out for adjournment, next committee in August we'll have a couple of things before us that are policy oriented. The first is around building closure. So we'll actually have the opportunity to look at our building closure policy. And I'll make sure that we share that well enough in advance for you all to be able to see it and look through it. But I'd like you guys to take a look at specifically are what are those qualitative aspects of it? What are the qualifications of it that we need to give a deeper look at and deeper consideration towards before closing a building? What are those things that you would say are valuable and why we should think about closing or consolidating a building, and what things aren't? So I'll make sure that you have that policy ahead of you. The other one is even more interesting. It is artificial intelligence. It is AI. We have some Neola language that is in place right now that you'll have the opportunity to take a look at and provide some additional feedback on. Again, where I think you guys can lend tremendous expertise is even the ethical considerations of artificial intelligence. Where are those things is there something in the policy that could otherwise be put in there of substance that isn't there? Where are there gaps in the policy as it's written right now? We don't have this AI policy on the books. We just have a draft writing of it. So I want to be clear about that too. So this is the opportunity to weigh in on that from a academic curriculum kind of standpoint, if you will. All right.
I'd like to make a comment.
Very quickly, sir. Yes.
Oh, I like ending the meeting on time. I wanted to wish all the men that I'm looking at who are fathers a happy Father's Day.
Oh, thank you.
I am looking at men who have educated children in high school and in college. You have set a great example for other fathers in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, good sir. Thank you. With that, is there a motion to adjourn? It is moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Can we call the roll?
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Deere?
Yes.
Ms. Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Yes.
You are adjourned.
All right. Happy Father's Day to the men in the room and to the men who aren't in the room. Happy Father's Day. Enjoy Sunday.